On the evening of August 8th, 2013, breaking into the early morning, an unsettling and eerie phone call would be placed to 911, in which it would contain a seemingly rattled and out-of-breath Brandon Lawson, making claims that someone was hunting him down. You can make out sounds of gunshots, and Lawson even claims to have physical cut wounds. However, it is unclear what is actually occurring over the duration of the phone call. Before we create a timeline of events to analyze the possibilities, let's cover some background on Brandon Lawson and what led to the events as we know them. Brandon Lawson was born in 1986, making him 26 years old at the time of his disappearance. He was employed as an oil field worker, or a roughneck as they are sometimes called. This type of work involved hard manual labor and typically meant working demanding hours on an oil drilling rig. Brandon spent a majority of his life in his home state of Texas, where he would go on to eventually meet his long-lasting girlfriend of 10 years, Lawson. They would go on to have 3 beautiful children together, while simultaneously caring for Lawson's eldest daughter, whom he had had in a previous relationship. Unfortunately, however, Lawson suffered from a number of vices, namely substance abuse, in particular methamphetamine. Let's now visit the penultimate evening of Brandon's disappearance. The night before his vanishing, Brandon had not returned home to his family. This set off his girlfriend Ladessa into a furious rage as she had suspicions of her partner's sudden relapse into his substance abuse after 6 months of staying clean. During this time, Brandon's brother Kyle Lawson, who will become important later, claimed after the fact that Brandon had been abusing methamphetamine in the brief lead up to his disappearance. All this information provides us with an image of Brandon Lawson's character, his motivations, and a small snippet into his life, which we can hopefully use to discern what happened on that fateful evening. Approximately sometime between 10:45 and 11 p.m. in San Angelo, Texas, Brandon Lawson returned home from his suspected drug-fueled escapades, only to get into a heated argument with his partner, Lawson. This conflict went on for about 30 minutes until it eventually led to Lawson calling his father, who was living in Crowley, Texas, about 3 hours out of San Angelo, to say that he was driving over to stay the night. At 11:54 p.m., Lawson stormed out of the house, got into his car, and began his 3-hour drive to his father's house in his silver Ford F-150. At around 12:30 a.m. on August 9th, Brandon called his brother Kyle Lawson and said he had run out of gas and was pulled over on U.S. Route 277 between San Angelo and Bront, Texas. This was the first of several outlandish and questionable phone calls made by Brandon. Over the duration of this call, Kyle claims that Brandon told him that, quote, 3 Mexicans are chasing me out of town. Kyle began to ask his brother about his mental state, primarily questioning if he was hallucinating from any substances, which Brandon starkly denied. At this point, Kyle, his wife, and 4-year-old daughter drove to Lawson's house to retrieve a fuel container. Kyle has claimed that in this time, he and his brother would continue on and off calling each other, but that Brandon was almost incapable of holding a conversation with him, usually ending the call each time after just a few sentences. At 12:50 a.m., Brandon Lawson made his now infamous call to 911, his primary message being that he had run out of gas and needed the police. During the call, Brandon appears incoherent, confused, erratic, and unsettled, not to mention clearly out of breath.
9/2013 0:50 and 38 seconds.
911 emergency.
Yes, I'm in the middle of the field. It's like we're just pushing guys over. Right here going towards Javelin on both sides. My truck ran out of gas. There's one car here and got chased to the woods. Please hurry.
Okay, now run that by me.
I'm not talking to him. I actually ran into him.
Ah, you ran into him. Okay.
Got the first guy.
Do you need an ambulance?
Yeah, no, I need the cops.
Okay. Is anybody hurt? Hello? Hello? Hello?
few minutes later, at 12:56 a.m., a random trucker called 911 to report a truck parked in a hazardous manner in the middle of the road. This truck, of course, belonged to Brandon Lawson. Between 12:50 and 1:15 a.m., Brandon would make and receive several calls from and to his brother Kyle, his girlfriend Ladessa, his neighbor, and the 911 dispatcher. However, during this time, due to an assumed poor cell phone reception, many of these calls would be sent straight to voicemail, until finally at 1:19 a.m., August 9th, 2013, all calls sent to Brandon Lawson's cell phone would go directly to voicemail. The last known call was between Brandon and Kyle, where Brandon, who was extremely out of breath, claims to be bleeding. Between 1 and 1:10 in the morning, both a police deputy and Kyle Lawson would arrive at Brandon's abandoned truck. Kyle would then call Brandon, who claimed he could see Kyle and that he was, quote, right here. Neither the deputy nor Kyle could see any sign of Brandon's presence. Kyle suspected Brandon of hiding from the deputy, as at the time Brandon had an arrest warrant out on him, which led Kyle to drive farther up the road in hopes this would entice his brother to show himself. However, after waiting for 45 minutes, Kyle Lawson left, although not without leaving the fuel container in Brandon's car. To Kyle's surprise, at 5 a.m. the next morning, Brandon's truck would still be abandoned on the road, and by 8 a.m., Brandon Lawson's truck would be towed, and with that, he would never be heard from again. So what can one make of this? A seemingly young, ordinary man with a family and stable occupation vanishes for a day and is suspected of relapsing. He returns home only to be chastised and berated by his partner. In the heat of it all, he leaves home to spend the night with his father. Less than an hour after he left, a series of unexplained, incoherent, and mysterious phone calls would be placed by him to friends, family, and the authorities. Shortly after these calls were made, his vehicle would be located, but not one single shred of evidence towards what happened to his person could be found. Was someone or something chasing him? Was he hallucinating after abusing methamphetamine? Did he take something else? Was he involved in something nobody knew about? It's almost impossible to say. Let's fast forward to today and review what has been done in the last 9 years since Brandon's disappearance. The aftermath of this led to the creation of a Facebook page by Brandon's family and friends called Help Find Brandon Lawson, which as of 2022 has received over 26,000 likes. However, most disturbing of all is on February 4th, 2022, Lawson's family made a post on said Facebook page, reporting that in a search party they had located clothing identified as belonging to Brandon Lawson, extremely close to his last known location. Shortly after finding this new evidence, Texas Rangers had conducted a thorough search of the same area again and had stumbled across human remains. DNA results are not yet complete as of October 2022, but the remains are expected by all to belong to the now 9-year-old missing cold case of Brandon Lawson. Obviously, we still don't know exactly what happened to Brandon. However, new evidence is coming to light, and very soon we may finally have an answer to this near-decade-old mystery. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for new videos regularly.